paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Well, good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted here on the UNX Network. I've got to get Shatner to teach me how to do that. Anyway, tonight's guest is going to be awesome because it's going back to what I'm really searching for. As you guys know, and I've brought it up many times, in a lot of cases, there seems to be a connection between all the paranormal, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, activity. For instance, in the Mothman case, there was Men in Black, UFOs. In Marley Woods, there's poltergeist activity, UFOs, glowing orbs, ghost activity. This seems to happen that where there's one, there's more. And that's why I'm asking this lady to come in. This is Jean Walker, and this is her book, Family Secrets. Jean, her brother, her husband, they've all, other members of the family, have all had situations involving ghosts, involving UFOs, aliens. Her story is amazing, and I want to bring Jean Walker in here to tell you about her life and her family secrets. Hi, Jean.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Well, not too bad. So you've had quite a life. It's amazing the things that's happened to you. Can you start at the beginning with us and kind of bring people through some of your book?
Okay. I was a science teacher, and when I retired, I found MUFON. And this brought out a lot of things with me, and I started to put together a lot of things that had happened to me throughout my life begin to make a lot of sense to me finally.
Okay.
And so I went from teaching into MUFON, and I do a lot with them. I'm section director now for Kansas City and a STAR team investigator. So I enjoy MUFON. I work the cases, and you know, I'm really into UFOs a lot. But I've had so many paranormal things happen to me throughout my life as well.
Well, just so the folks understand, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and that is the group that is pretty much the top for investigating unidentified phenomena, correct? As far as UFOs. Yeah. Okay, but this all started with you as a child, if I understand your book correctly.
Yes, I sent you a picture of me in the crib, and the only thing I could remember from growing up for many, many years was that I had a horrible, scary face that frightened me to the point I remembered it even from the crib. And I mean, what do you remember from the crib? Not much. So that tells you how scared I was. And I would ask my mother, what in the world could have scared me like that? But she never had an answer to what it could have been. Many years later, after I had been through many experiences, I began to figure out that they had picked me as an infant in the crib, knowing what they were going to use me for, which was a hybrid mother. And when I say they, I'm talking aliens.
Okay. So they had chosen you, and I guess your brother is a part of this too, because he had his own experiences, to actually, oh gosh, how do we say this? Give birth to the hybrids?
Yes, I was a hybrid mother for sure. They took 4 of my babies, and they took sperm from my brother. I named my book Family Secrets because in investigating and reading and just a lot of personal contacts, I have found out that usually if one person in a family has had these experiences. Others have too.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. So I named my book Family Secrets. It's very common that this happens. I don't know whether they're looking for a certain DNA or certain traits, perhaps, of a family, but I do truly believe it happens within the families.
If I remember correctly, the lady, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank with her name, but she was about early 60s, and she and her husband were abducted. They were an interracial couple.
God, Betty and
Barney.
Barney and Betty. Yes.
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 I believe she had said that not only did the aliens follow her through life, but also even after death, things were seen over Barney's grave.
Oh, I did not know that. I'll be darned. Well, I believe it. They followed me throughout my childhood.
Okay.
And I was very frightened, and I just knew I was being watched all the time. And where I lived, everybody had a lot of land, acre, 2 acres. It was very much country. It's not now, it's all city, but back then it was very country. And we had a barn in the back and a pond behind the barn. The pond wasn't on our property, but it was still right there. And we would play as kids at the pond a lot. And as I'd walk up towards the house and stuff, I would remember that our barn, because we had a horse, I called him the Silver Man because he wore a silver suit. And the strange thing is, though, I can't remember what his face was like. I'd like to get hypnotized sometime. So I don't know if it just frightened me so bad that I didn't want to see the face or what it was, but he would follow me and watch me all the time. My brother said one time we were all out playing tag as kids, and he said, I ran up to him and I said, Ted, don't you see the Silver Man? He's hiding behind the trees over there, or the bushes, whatever. And he said he never actually seen them, but he said, boy, sis, you were terrified. He said, you were really scared. And then I would tell my parents all the time, they're going to take me. Only I didn't know who they were at the time. And I'm sure that frightened my parents because I knew I was being watched, and I had this feeling they were going to take me. I think they were taking me already, but I remember my father saying one time maybe we should put bars on her bedroom windows and give her more security, make her feel safer, but it wouldn't have helped. They didn't do it, but they considered, because they didn't know what to do. I was that frightened growing up. So they kind of terrorized me all my life. When I got in my 20s, I was married, and I had 4 miscarriages, all within 3 to 4 months of pregnancy. But the weird thing about all of those were I passed after birth. I had all the testing done to know I was definitely pregnant that they had back then, because that was back in the 60s. But I never passed a fetus.
And if I remember in the book, the way you said that was there was really no evidence there was ever a child in you, according to the doctors. Is that?
Well, the last pregnancy, I carried it the furthest, almost 4 months. And one day the doctor just told me on a regular exam that the baby wasn't growing anymore. And I realized then that he said it had died. So he said, your uterus is too large to do a D&C on you. So I'm going to send you home for 2 weeks. And then I want you to come back and I'll check you. And then we'll probably put you in the hospital and do a D&C, which is where they go up and scrape the uterus out.
Right.
So I went back in 2 weeks. He says, there's nothing there. I didn't pass anything. And I'd had all the tests done. And I go, how could that be? How could there be nothing there? And I really don't think he knew how to answer me. And he goes, well, nature has a way of taking care of these things.
Well,
But
when I read your book, apparently, if I remember right, that is similar on the other three pregnancies, is that they kept saying there was very little left, and that's the body's way of cleaning or whatever. But each time, wasn't that a similar situation?
well, the first time I did pass the afterbirth,
Mm-hmm.
and the doctor says, I know you think this is a fetus, but it's not. It was the first time I was ever pregnant. I didn't know. He said, this is afterbirth. I was like, okay, so where was the fetus? I
Yeah.
don't know, you know. And so each pregnancy was sort of, but with each one, I had all the testing done, and I was pregnant. The rabbit died. they did what they called the rabbit test back then.
Right.
And then I never was able to have children. I was pretty messed up inside, and I adopted my son.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am a mother, and it worked out very well for me. I'm really happy with him, but it still bothers me, even at my age today.
And while you were a child, there was other things going on, correct? And your brother had some amazing experiences as well?
Yes, we had so many, I hardly know where to begin. Where we lived was right on the Santa Fe Trail, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but my brother and I would see a lot of the same things. Like Mother would make us lay down and take naps in these what looked like prisoners were guys. It was like watching a movie on the wall, and we would see them smoking cigarettes. They had a dog. They would move around. My brother said once they looked at him and the guy winked at him. Now that never happened to me, but that I don't know. It was some kind of a repetitive, thing that it just happened over and over and over, and it was very strange.
Was it always the same, like
sometimes
a residual?
Yes.
Was it always the
On
same,
that
like a
one.
residual haunting? Yeah. Okay.
On that one, it was. Yes.
Okay.
And we had many strange things happen. My brother was terrified, thought devils were swooping down on him all the time. Now I think it wasn't. I think it was aliens. I don't think that it was devils. And when he got to be grown, my mother had called him and said that her lights in the back of the house, her motion lights, kept coming on. And she was scared. She said, would you come spend a night with me? So he did. He said, and I'm pretty sure my mother was probably being abducted, I'm sorry, because I think that's what was happening, because it was always in the middle of the night. And so that next morning, she left really early for work every day. And it was still dark out. And my brother said that he was paralyzed. He woke up, he was laying there, he couldn't move anything but his eyes. And he said he saw they took sperm from him. I'm not going to go into all the details. I did in my book, but and he saw the alien walk out with the sperm. So I think my mother was also being abducted. But we had a great grandmother, my dad's grandmother, Nettie, who was a well-known psychic in Kansas City back in the 50s. She would do radio shows, and people would pay her to find stuff they lost and all kinds of things. And she could do some really funny things too, like spirits knocking on the door. She could, and levitating a heavy big table.
Really?
She was a widow, and so was his mother. So they lived together and raised my father. So my dad lived with his mom and grandmother. And the grandmother was the one that was the psychic. And my grandma, though, she told me that there was no tricks to it. She was actually doing it. They lived in a big old house in Kansas City, a boarding house. And grandma rented the upstairs apartments, but she had this huge dining room with a heavy walnut table. It was huge. I remember it well. And grandmother, she said, could levitate it, quite a ways up off the floor. But she did some really interesting things. I put all these things. My dad in my book, because my dad was missing in action for 9 months in World War II, and ended up he was a prisoner of war, weighed like 96 pounds when he came out, but they didn't know if he was dead or alive during that 9 months. And she said my great grandmother, went into one of the bedrooms, and they had those big old heavy walnut doors they pulled shut. And she would meditate in there. And it took her 3 days. And she told my grandmother, she said, don't bother me. I don't care what happens, what you hear, don't bother me. Okay. And so it took her 3 days before she came out. And she says, I see him. He is alive. She said, I see him walking with a tin pan and some other things that she saw. So she said, if I'm wrong about this, I'll never do it again. And it's just some really cute stories. She said, I see him running up. They had big stairway that came up into the house from the yard. And she said, I see him running up the steps, taking 2 at a time, yelling, Mom, Grandma, Mom, Grandma. She says he's all excited and happy about something. Well, right after he came home from World War II, my mother got pregnant. They'd been together 7 years. So they were real happy. And he was running up the steps. And he did just that, just exactly like my grandmother had seen it. So, yeah, she was really good. And I think I acquired a lot of her psychic abilities as well. Not near as good as she was, but as I've gotten older, I'm getting more and more psychic.
Okay.
So again, family tradition of everything running through the family lines.
I have to ask, and I hope this is going to be strange, but last week I had a guest who had a dream, and the dream had 2 nuclear mushroom clouds and a date in May. You're not seeing anything like that, are you?
No.
Thank God. Okay.
No. I have seen, many years ago, I had seen some bad plane crashes, but I have not. Thank God I haven't seen that one. Maybe I don't want it.
Good. I'll choose to believe you haven't seen it. It's not real. What else? I mean, there was other things in your book about your brother specifically, and some of the things happening to him as a child. What kind of adventures did you and him share like this?
Well, we shared a lot of we saw UFOs together sometimes, and we shared a lot of the paranormal stuff that we both would see or hear. As he got older, he had totally different things happen to him than I ever did. He was working, he works at Lake City Arsenal, where they make bullets here in Independence. And then he works on the side at the Truman Library as a janitor.
Okay.
So he doesn't now, because then. And he was in the Truman Library, and he was in cleaning the movie room, and there was no one in there with him. And he said he looked up and he saw this very large, strange shaped object. Like it was like over 6 feet tall. And it had it kind of looked like a rocket to me, only it had all these different colors in it. And the colors would flip over. And he said this thing, he didn't know what it was, and it was lit up with a lot of light. And he said it just came at him, and he said it really scared him, and before he could do anything, it went right through him. Mm-hmm. And he said he turned around, looked behind him to see if it was, come out from him, but it didn't. And so I have asked other psychics. I've never heard of anything like this. My friend Margie Kay, who's, is a psychic and remote viewer, and she said it's a good spiritual thing. And he is a very good person. So she said that went into him. he had a near-death experience when we were children, and he was real sick one day, and my mother went to work, and my I went to work or school, and
Hmm.
so he was there by himself, and he said that he had this. He was so sick with the flu. He was running extremely high fever. He said that he was covered in sweat. He said he really thought he died, and because he didn't feel like he was breathing. And there was this road, like a rock made out of brick or something like that, and he was floating over it. And he went to a cave, and the cave had a big opening, and he floated inside. And he said down, he was looking down, and there was like a stage, and there was this huge giant down there. And he said there were people down there. He said this giant would pick a person up and look at him for a while, and then he'd sit them back down, or he'd pick them up and throw them down. And said a lot of people, most of them, were being thrown down into hell.
Hmm.
And so he said later he realized that Jesus was carrying him, and that's why he felt like he was floating. And he
Okay.
thinks they wanted to know if he didn't live a good life, the giant would throw him down into hell. That was what he thought the purpose of this near death experience was.
Hmm.
So
And then,
that was very true.
and if I remember, you all found somebody else who also had seen or written about a giant
Oh,
throwing people down, right?
yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, he said one day he took his wife to the doctor's office, and she was in seeing the doctor, and there was always magazines, and he was reading this article, and this person in this article was describing the same thing as had happened to him in his near death experience. So he
Hmm.
said that just really made him realize that what he saw and what happened to him was true because it was so similar.
Okay. So, in your own opinion, do you believe the psychic is a gift from God, or is this something that has happened because the aliens have been dealing with your whole family?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know. I was so much older, retired, before I realized what was going on with me
Hmm.
and what had happened to me for sure. And all my all my relatives were dead. So had I been able to now talk to them, and find out what was really happening to them, I'd have a better idea. Um, I don't have the psychic ability that my great grandmother had, but they
Okay.
said that when she was a child, she was like that from the time she was born on, because her mother would be, they lived on a farm, and she would fix lunch for all the workmen. And she would look at Nettie and say, "What field are they in, Nettie?" Because it was a huge area. And Nettie would think, and she'd tell her mother where they were at. So she grew up with that ability to see things. And I did too, but I never honed in on it.
Hmm.
I didn't realize, like I saw fairies as a child, and I saw an elf, a gnome, something like that one time too.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I was crossing through a pasture going over to some neighbors' kids, and there was a stump, and there stood this elf, gnome like creature, and he was just looking at me. But I felt like he was a little evil. I really didn't want anything to do with him.
Okay.
And so I just stared at him, and then I kept on running because I didn't want to get near him. But yeah, I mean, I've seen things and experienced so many strange things.
Yeah, apparently. Have you ever considered going to Scotland, Ireland, where these elementals are reported to be more?
That would be interesting. I'd like to.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it'd be interesting.
yeah, it would. I haven't really seen them since I've been grown. So
Hmm.
I would like, well, I did catch a picture though of one. I put it in my book when I was out doing an investigation, but I didn't actually see it with my eyes, but the camera caught it. And when I looked at the picture, you can really see that that's a little fairy. Looks like Tinkerbell.
Do you think that's something you could gain with practice and time if you worked on that?
I think all of it is the psychic
Okay.
part and everything. Margie Kay has helped me with a lot of it. Her meditations that she does and teaching people to be remote viewing, that
Mhm.
all that helps a lot too. I just don't have a lot of time to practice it like I should.
I understand it. Well, you had a book to write. And again, the book is called Family Secrets.
Yes.
It has the little alien on the front. So when we know that you and your brother was affected, perhaps your mother, your great grandmother had abilities. Do you think this has gone on from the beginning of your family line?
Again, they've all been gone so long, I have no way of knowing at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, I think especially the abductions because of what has happened with my brother and me, and we we just had so many experiences to separate and together growing up. So he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of psychic ability, but sometimes things will come to him. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had so many dreams. A lot of it used to come to me in dreams.
Okay.
The one time they let me see my son, one of my children, that they took. And I don't know how I got there, but I found myself in a round room. It was all chrome and sterile, very cold atmosphere. There was a huge machine to the right of me that was going around. I don't know what that was, but to the left of me was like elevator doors. And I was sitting on a chrome bench, and all of a sudden those doors opened, the elevator like doors opened, and out walked a man, a full grown man, and this little boy, about 9, 8, 9, something like that, which would have been about the age of the last miscarriage I'd had.
Okay.
Both the man and the boy were blonde, blue eyed. The man was very handsome features. They both had on long white robes with gold ties that went around them. And nothing was ever said. The man walked the little boy up to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I leaned over and put my arms around the little boy and held him. And I knew he was mine. Mother instinct. I knew that was my child. And so I held him for a while. And then I let him go, and the man took him, and they went back, turned around, went back onto the elevator, and that was it. But the reason I knew that this was not a dream was about another 10 years later. I just happened on a whim to pick up a UFO book one day. I think it was even in the grocery store. I thought it looked interesting. And a lady, I was sitting on my couch reading this book, and this lady described the exact same thing happening to her.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. Only she knew she had been abducted. And that was the point then I began to realize what had happened to me. And I about fell off that couch reading that book. I couldn't believe it because it was so similar.
Uh-huh. And I have heard that same story before myself, and I think Bud Hopkins talked about when he regressed a woman, she remembered them bringing her a baby, and she held it for 5 minutes, and they took the baby away. But he said it had something to do with a bond.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but yeah, I've heard a very similar story before myself.
Well, from what I've read and heard since then is they want the children to have some bonding, as you say, with the human mother.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's a father. I've heard where men have had the same experience. And they did take my brother's sperm. So, it hasn't
Hmm.
happened to him, but it could. I've read where some men, they did the bonding with the father.
I was not aware of that. That's intriguing. So,
Yes.
okay. As you got older and became a teacher, did the science part of your mind try to rationalize what you thought you saw and heard throughout your childhood, or did you accept this really happened?
Well, actually, I think it made me more sure. In Do you know who Carl Sagan is? A famous astronomer and
Absolutely.
science.
Cosmos.
Yes, yes. He said in there that the universe is so huge, so gigantic and massive that the human mind cannot even begin to comprehend the vastness of it. So you think of that and you think, really, how could we be the only living thing in this tremendously vast universe?
Hmm.
And to me, it just assures me even more, learning what I have scientifically, that there are other living forms out there.
Okay. As you probably heard in when I was introducing you, there is so many cases where wherever there is cryptids or UFOs, there's also ghost activity, government, men in black, whatever. Do you find all this is related somehow, your psychic abilities and your dealing with the aliens?
Yes, I do. It's very much so. I think that's why, like Margie and I are so attracted to being in MUFON. And
Hmm.
a lot of times I try to counsel people. Some people, when they see stuff, it frightens them so badly, they can't really deal with it. So they'll ask me, questions. And sometimes I'm on the phone a long time talking with these people. But one time, Margie Kay and I and Dave Zugomar in southern Missouri, south of St. Louis, doing a case. And we were out on the river down there and on a sandbank. And I was looking, it was at night, and we were looking at lights with this person that reported that we were interviewing. And I had the night vision binoculars. And
Hmm.
I was looking, it was heavily wooded down there, very heavy woods. And as I was looking through the night vision in the woods, I saw a Bigfoot. And
Okay.
I swear it had Bigfoot because he, he was moving very quickly. Of course, the color is always different when you look through night vision.
Hmm.
And but he appeared white in the night vision. And the way he was going through that woods and the size of him and the shape of him, I mean, he was way bigger than any man I've ever seen. It had to have, I really think it was a Bigfoot.
Okay.
And that's kind of the second time that I've had experiences. But yes, they are all interrelated, it seems. Bigfoots, often when people see cryptids, they will see lights all around them.
Right.
A lot of people at my MUFON meetings will come up and tell me what they've seen, and they see down here. Well, in Independence, Missouri, we have the Missouri River, and there's been a lot of sightings over there of Bigfoots and this other strange cryptid. This lady said they were driving out of the park off the river there. It's right on, the park's right on the river. And she said, all of a sudden in the middle of the road was this creature. And she said, for a lack of any other term that you could think of, it looked like a kangaroo because its back legs, the way it was, folded under and back. And she said, and it had big long ears though, real long ears. And she
Hmm.
said it was strange looking, but closely resembled the kangaroos of anything she could think of. And she said it just sat there and it wouldn't move. And she said, so her husband looked at her and says, oh my God, what the hell is that? And she goes, I don't know. So she said they had to drive out and around this creature to get out. And the very same creature I had another lady come up and tell me about, but it was clear at the other end of town. It was out anywhere, out on a country road. And she described it the same way, that it looked like a kangaroo with big long ears. And it was sitting, it was about 3 feet high. It was sitting on the road, on the side of the road. That one was on the side of the road. And so I don't know if they're getting screen visions. In other words, it's really an alien, but your mind can't comprehend that. So you think it's something else, because it would scare you too bad to think that it was an alien. I've had experience. I'm sorry.
No, please. No, go ahead.
I've had experiences like that with owls. And I sent you a picture last night about with the owl and the alien together. And those are strange memories that people get often with these cryptids.
I have heard before about the owl connection, that when you see these things with big eyes, they make you see an owl, or your mind goes to an owl. So I've heard that before, and it's an incredible theory. What other kind of theories have you managed to come up with in these years?
Well, I don't know that I have particular theories outside of that. I really do believe there's aliens, and I believe they are taking humans. And sometimes they do not such nice things. My experiences with the aliens were never nice or good. They terrified me as a child from the time I was born on, then took my babies, and they continue to take me to this day. I wake up with all kinds of wounds that I don't go to bed with. And so now I document them, because I realize what's probably happening. One time I woke up, and on my outer arms here, I was all scratched up real bad. And I happened to be having a meeting that day, or with some other investigators. And they looked at me and they said, that looks like defense wounds, like you were trying to defend yourself. And I think I fight them when they tried to take me.
Okay.
Now, why they're still taking me at my age, I don't know. But I have talked with other abductees that think they healed them.
Okay.
I think they tracked me. Maybe they're just checking different physical things about me as I age. Maybe sometimes they've helped me and I don't know that they have. But I have certainly got people that say that they actually healed them, take them aboard and heal them. Then I've had people that say they pretty much torture them when they're taken.
But I guess in one way, what we would feel as torture is actually their way of healing. There may be some device or some way they have of doing that. I'm guessing here. I don't know either.
I think you're right, man. I read this analogy one time, and it really stuck with me with the aliens, that if you take a little kitten and you get it, and you take it to the vet, and the vet shoots its shots and tests it for worms and does all these things to it. That kitten is terrified. It's being hurt. It doesn't realize, but in reality, it is helping the kitten. It's going to help it live longer and take care of it. So I thought, maybe the experiences aren't what we think they are.
But they are still a horrifying experience for you.
Yes, definitely.
Do you have any memories of, aside from when you saw the baby or the young boy come in? Did you have any memories of them in the ship or wherever they had you?
Just the men that brought him out, and I believe they were Nordics because of the blonde hair and the blue eyes.
Okay.
The other thing I can tell you is that in my investigations, I've come across reptilians, people that have seen, anytime the name reptilian comes up, I am just terrified. It terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point they had taken me, and that's why I had this great fear of them. I do want to go get hypnotized. I'm going to do it before I die, and because I know there's a lot there that I can't remember, even though I remember a lot of bits and pieces. One thing I kept remembering when I was writing my book, it came to me what it was. I talk about repetitive dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You have dreams that are like psychic dreams, and I had a lot of them. But then I had a dream that I kept having over and over and over throughout for years and years and years, and could never make sense of it. And my grandparents, I practically lived at their house every chance I got, and there was a bridge down close to their house. And I kept dreaming I was inside a bridge, which makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I was horribly scared, terrified. And I could remember these other people being in there with me. And I remembered that we would run from one end to the other end of this
Mm-hmm.
bridge. Well, like I said, I kept having this dream and having this dream. Well, my psychic kicked in on me when I was writing about it on repetitive dreams, and I realized what had happened. I spent so much time down there at my grandparents' house. I think I was being abducted from their house too.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a bridge, it probably was over the bridge or somewhere in that area of that bridge close to their house. And I was in this room that was like, it must have been inside the spaceship because this room, it was all steel. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing in there. And I was probably in there with 12, 15 other people. And there were doors at each end of this rectangular room.
Okay.
When the doors would open on this side, we were all terrified and we would, in terror, run over to the other side so they wouldn't be grabbing us. And then that door would close, and pretty soon they'd open this door. And we'd do the same thing, and we would run back the other way.
Uh-huh.
So that dream finally made sense to me, and I've never had it again since.
And what do you think is the meaning of that dream?
I think we were all abducted, and
Okay.
some kind of testing on us, and we were all terrified. And sometimes, have you ever met people where you feel like you've known them from somewhere else, or they look so familiar, or
Mm-hmm.
you have some sense of meeting them, but you haven't? I think a lot of times, like on these, when we've been abducted, maybe that's where we were recognizing some of these people.
So do you think they were causing this sense of fear and panic within you?
Yes. I think we knew what they were going to do, and we were scared of them. We knew they were going to do some kind of testing,
Mm-hmm.
something that wasn't going to be good.
And is this the Nordics or the others?
I don't know.
Okay.
I never have gotten a sense of, except for the Greys.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Greys, so I think it's the Greys. But then, I've read so much. They say some of the Greys are just workers,
Mm-hmm.
and smaller ones, and they're robotic, like in their actions and
Okay.
unemotional. And that a lot of times they're the ones that come and get you and take you. But when you get there, it could either be a totally different type of aliens, or it might be the larger Greys.
Okay.
They're more like they're more human-like, and they're not so robotic, and they do the actual testing on people.
Whitley Strieber discussed seeing people in Air Force uniforms, military uniforms, humans, in with them. Have you had any kind of experience like that?
No, not that I can remember. I have.
Okay.
I wish I could remember more about the types, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether it just scares me so bad. It's kind of like seeing that silver man that followed me all the time.
Yeah.
And that pond that was right behind our house where I was growing up, one day I was down below with my brother and we were playing below the dam of the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up, saw the man running along the edge of that dam. And I don't know how I did this because I'm so scared of him, but I got my courage. I was a pretty gutsy little kid, pretty gutsy old woman. But I got my nerve up and I ran up. I thought, I'm going to go see what he's doing or what he looks like closer. I ran up that side of that dam, and when I got to the top and came around, he wasn't there.
Okay.
But I looked down in the water, and you know how when you throw a rock in the water and you get those rings that go around and around and around? That's what I saw. And in that, I saw silvery, sparkly things going down in the pond.
Okay.
So I have often wondered, since I felt like he watched me all the time, if they didn't have some kind of a pod that he was living in or staying in a lot back there in that pond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and because to see that silvery stuff come down as I looked down in there and him just disappearing like he did by the time I got up there.
Mm-hmm.
So just another one of my strange experiences.
Actually, it's quite intriguing. When as you said, some things has triggered memories in you. The book about the guy seeing the demon throwing things made sense because of your brother's experience. So, what advice would you have for people who may be watching this and saying, "Wait a minute, I've seen that silver man, or I've had dreams of running from door to door or something"? Would you have any advice for someone like that?
Well, kind of the main reason I like doing my MUFON stuff, people sometimes are so reluctant to talk to you about things. And as I talk to them, then they'll say, oh, I think I did see an alien, you know, but that wouldn't be the main thing that they contacted us to begin with. And I just say, just know that you're not crazy. Just know that it probably did really happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I also help facilitate it's called a Kansas City Experiencer Group. And we meet once a month. And the main thing you have to be in that group, you have to have had an experience.
Okay.
So it is a place where you can come together and talk with other people that have had and listen to their stories, and you can share stories and help each other out. And groups like that, I think, are very helpful.
Okay. How do people find something like that? And I ask this only because I've been to some, found them in the newspaper. Here's where we're meeting. I go, and some of these people are just so far out there. Just how do you find a reputable group?
I don't know. The group I go to originally started with a psychologist, and Margie Kay was in it, and she invited me to go. So if you know anybody in MUFON, or you might talk to MUFON and find out if they could recommend someplace for you to go. But the lady that ran it originally was a psychologist, but she got very sick. So Margie Kay and I, because it was either we took over or and did the facilitating of this group, or it was going to dissolve. Okay. And so that's what we do, but it's just helping each other. And newspapers, I think we advertise, Margie advertises on Facebook. And you just have to try the groups out until you found the right place for you. Or maybe a psychologist could help you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame Bud Hopkins passed away. I think he was a real moving force in this field.
He was, and there are so many kooks that it is hard sometimes to find the right people to talk to.
I didn't want to use that word, but that's the one that was popping into my mind. Yes. Gene Walker, author of Family Secrets. And Gene, how can people find your book? By the way, that is an awesome cover.
Thank you. I loved it. I put the smoke behind it for the paranormal part.
How do people get a hold of this?
It's on Amazon, or
Mhm.
you can go to my website, jeanmwalker.com, and you can see I have videos and things on there about a lot of the stuff that's happened to me, and some
Okay.
interviews. Um, and I can send you also a cook, and I call it Out of This World Recipes. And you'd have to contact me to get this one. This one is not on Amazon.
Okay. And again, how would they contact you? Would you give us your email address again?
Yes, it's JMW Blondie, BLONDIE, at hotmail.com.
Okay.
So
All
either
right. Well,
way.
Gene Walker, author of Family Secrets. And is there any more advice, anything you can give people who's really curious and interested in this kind of a phenomenon?
Join MUFON, read, get a lot of good books and read. You can find them all over. I
Mhm.
mean, books on this subject matter are all over. And just start educating yourself. And it's like me reading about that lady that saw her son and the aliens were showing her, and then I knew
Yeah.
what it happened. It was so similar to mine. So if you have things you're wondering about, it's a good way to try to figure things out.
Well, I'd have to advise, because I've got to read this, Family Secrets, and also Whitley Strieber's books. You two have some very common stories in common, very similar stuff.
I've met him a couple of times at the UFO conference down in Eureka Springs.
Uh-huh.
A big group of us all ate together and everything. I've got to talk to him. He's very interesting. Yes, his books are good. I loved his book. I had read Communion when it came out, and it was so good. I am in the process of writing another book. I have a case that I have worked for 8 years with this lady. She is a UFO magnet, among many other things. And I'm going to put a couple other interesting cases that I've had in there too. So just
Okay.
check my website, and hopefully I'll have this done this next year, I hope.
Do you have a Facebook page for folks to look at when you post photos and things?
No, I don't.
No?
I should. Margie's always on. I'll do that, though. I do need to do that.
The website's enough. All right. Gene, thanks for coming in. And I am very appreciative you sent the book, because this was amazing reading.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks. We'll bring you back again.
Okay. Pleasure to meet you, Dan.
Take care, Gene.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, friends. You saw it. You make up your own minds, but I have heard these similar stories and read in different books similar stories over and over again. I don't know much about the UFO field. That's Race Hobbs' area of expertise. I'm just a ghost hunter. But when all of these phenomenons seem to happen together, again, the Mothman, the Marley Woods, the Skinwalker Ranch, and others, it makes you really got to wonder, how connected are these things? Cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, all in the same area at the same time? Why? Unless, again, they're all connected. I don't know. Just real briefly, I want to remind you the West Virginia Paranormal Tourism Convention is going on May 13th. If you're anywhere near Oak Hill, West Virginia, I'll be speaking. It's got a bunch of the folks who's been on my show. Mountaineer Paranormal is talking. Tanya Webb from the old hospital in College Hill. Shitan Noir, the editor of Sasquatch GQ magazine, she'll be there talking about cryptids, and so many others. Scott Worley will be there. So if you get a chance, it's inexpensive. It's a one-day thing. There's some stuff going on afterwards. Come on in and check it out. It's a great time. And to give you a little more room, the X-Con coming up 2023, Blue Springs, Missouri, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. I'll be speaking on Friday. That's the day for paranormal, the ghosts. Saturday, they'll be discussing UFOs all day, and Sunday, cryptids. So you've got everything you could want in one place. Giving you plenty of time to check it out. Check out our website, which is unxnetwork.com. And right up there under events, there'll be a heading for XCon. Hit that, see if you don't think you need to be there. So for now, for Race and for Margie, and of course for Gene, thank you for coming. I want you all to stay spooked. Good night.